GST, Goods and Services Tax. Important points to remember. For departmental exam, PSC exams, UPSC exams, UGC NET exam, SET, in-service exams, degree PG level exams and various other exams. GST registration. GST registration is mandatory for all e-commerce sellers. Registration under GST is mandatory for all businesses whose annual turnover exceeds rupees 40 lakhs, 40 lakhs in a financial year. This threshold is rupees 20 lakh for special category states such as Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Meghalaya, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim, Tripura, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Then important points to remember. Nature of registration. UIN holders, that is UN bodies, embassies and other notified persons, GST practitioner cannot apply for revocation of cancelled registration. In case the registration is cancelled on the request of the taxpayer or his legal hire, one cannot apply for revocation of cancelled registration. The revocation of cancellation of registration under the SGST Act, UTGST Act, as the case may be, shall be deemed to be a revocation of cancellation of registration under CGST Act. Then important points. The registration in GST is PAN based and state specific. One registration per state UT. However, a business entity having separate places of business in a state may obtain separate registration for each of its places of business. GST identification number called GST IN, a 15-digit number, and a certificate of registration incorporating therein. This GST IN is made available to the applicant on the GSTN common portal. Registration under GST is not tax specific, that is single registration for all the taxes, that is CGST, SGST, UTGST, IGST and cesses. Then persons liable to registration. Those who exceed threshold limit. In case of transfer of business on account of succession, etc., transferee liable to be registered from the date of succession of business. In case of amalgamation, demerger by an order of High Court, etc., transferee liable to be registered from the date on which registrar of companies issues incorporation certificate giving effect to order of High Court, etc. Then taxable supplies plus exempt supplies plus exports plus interstate supplies is equal to aggregate turnover. Aggregate turnover will be computed on all India basis for same PAN. Then applicable threshold limit. State with the threshold limit of rupees 10 lakh for supplier of goods and or services. Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland and Tripura. Then states UTs with threshold limit of rupees 20 lakh for supplier of goods and or services. Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, Sikkim, Uttarakhand, Puducherry and Telangana. Then states UTs with threshold limit of rupees 20 lakh for suppliers of services, both goods and services, and rupees 40 lakhs for supplies of goods intrastate. Jammu and Kashmir, Assam, Himachal Pradesh and all other states. Then compulsory registration in certain cases. Interstate supplier. Casual taxable person. Person receiving supplies on which tax is payable by recipient on reverse charge basis. Non-resident taxable persons. A person making taxable supplies on behalf of some other taxable person, that is an agent of some principal. Persons, class of persons notified by the central state government. Then next, person not liable for registration. Person engaged exclusively in supplying goods, services, both not liable to tax, wholly exempt from tax. Agriculturist limited to supply of produce out of cultivation of land. Persons making only reverse charge supplies. Persons making interstate supplies of taxable services up to rupees 20 lakh. Persons making interstate taxable supplies of notified handicraft goods up to rupees 20 lakh. Casual taxable persons making interstate taxable supplies of notified handicraft goods up to rupees 20 lakh. Rupees 10 lakh in case of special category states of Mizoram, Tripura, Manipur and Nagaland. Then next, where and by when to apply for registration. Person who is liable to be registered under section 22 or section 24. In every such state UTs in which he is so liable, within 30 days from the date on which he becomes liable to registration. Then a casual taxable person or a non-resident taxable person. In every state UTs in which he is so liable at least 5 days prior to the commencement of business. Then voluntary registration and UIN. Voluntary registration. Person not liable to be registered under section 22 and 24 may get himself registered voluntarily. Then unique identification number UIN. In respect of supplies to some notified agencies of United Nations organizations, multinational financial institutions and other organizations, a UIN is issued. Then next, effective date of registration. Application submitted within 30 days, 30 days of the applicant becoming liable to registration. Effective date is the date on which the person becomes liable to registration. Then application submitted after 30 days, 30 days of the applicant becoming liable to registration. Effective date is date of grant of registration. And next, procedure for registration. Part 1. Every person liable to get registered and person seeking voluntary registration shall, before applying for registration, declare his permanent account number PAN and state UT in Part A of Form GST REG 01 on GST Common Portal. PAN is validated online by Common Portal from CBDT database and is also be verified through separate OTPs sent to the PAN linked mobile number and email address. Temporary reference number TRN is generated and communicated to the applicant on the validated mobile number and email address. Using TRN, applicant shall electronically submit application in Part B of application form along with specified documents at the Common Portal. Part B of application contains the details such as constitution of business, jurisdiction, option for composition, date of commencement of business, reason to obtain registration, address of PPOB and nature of activity carried out therein, details of APOB, details of bank accounts, details of authorized signatory, Aadhaar authentication, etc. On receipt of such application, an acknowledgement in the prescribed form shall be issued to the applicant electronically. A casual taxable person, CTP, applying for registration gets a TRN for making an advance deposit of tax in his electronic cash ledger and an acknowledgement is issued by only after said deposit. Application shall be forwarded to the proper office. The next, Part 2. The next procedure. Proper officer examines the application and accompanying documents. Proper officer examines the application and accompanying documents. If same are found in order, If the answer is yes, registration granted within 7 working days from the date of submission of application without site verification if applicant successfully validate his Aadhaar or authentication. Then proper officer examines the application and accompanying documents if same are found in order. Yes. If the answer is yes, registration is granted within 30 days, 30 days of application after verification of site and prescribed documents. Where applicant fails to undergo Aadhaar authentication does not opt for Aadhaar authentication. Where PO deems it fit to carry out site verification, where a person who has undergone Aadhaar authentication is identified and on common portal based on data analysis and risk parameters to carry out site verification. If the proper officer examines the application and accompanying documents, if same are found in order, the answer is no. Proper officer issues notice thereby seeking clarification, information, or documents from the application electronically. Within 30 days from the application submission date, where a person fails to undergo Aadhaar authentication does not opt for Aadhaar authentication, where PO deems it fit to carry out site verification, where a person who has undergone Aadhaar authentication is identified on common portal based on data analysis and risk parameters to carry out site verification. If the answer is no and proper officer issues notice thereby seeking clarification, that is, clarification includes modification, correction of particulars declared in the application for registration other than PAN, state mobile number, and email address, information or documents from the applicant electronically, then within 7 working days from application submission date, that is other cases. And if the answer is no, proper officer issues notice thereby seeking clarification includes modification, correction of particulars declared in the application for registration other than PAN, state mobile number, and email address, information or documents from the application electronically. If applicant has furnished the clarification, information or documents within 7 working days, I repeat, if applicant has furnished the clarification includes modification, correction of particulars declared in the application for registration other than PAN, state mobile number, and email address, information or documents within 7 days time from receipt of notice. If the answer is yes, if proper office is satisfied with it, if the answer is yes, proper officer will grant registration within 7 working days from the date of receipt of information clarification documents. Then if the answer is no, proper officer may reject the application for reason to be recorded in writing. Then next, special procedure for registration of CTP and NRTP. CTP, casual taxable person. A casual taxable person is one who has a registered business in same state in India but wants to effect supplies from some other state in which he is not having any fixed place of business. Such a person need to register in the state from where he seeks to supply as a casual taxable person. Then non-resident taxable person. A non-resident taxable person is one who is a foreigner and occasionally wants to effect taxable supplies from any state in India and for that he needs GST registration. These two, CTP, that is casual taxable person, and NRTP, non-resident taxable person, GST law prescribes a special procedure for registration as also for extension of the operation period of such casual or non-resident taxable persons. They have to apply for registration at least 5 days in advance before making any supply. Registration is granted to them, that is for CTP and NRTP, or period of operation is extended only after they make advance deposit of the estimated tax liability. Registration is granted to them for the period specified in the registration application or 90 days from the effective date of registration. Then amendment of registration. Except for the changes in some core information in the registration application, a taxable person shall be able to make amendments without requiring any specific approval from the tax authority. In case there is change in core fields of information, the taxable person will apply for amendment within 15 days, 15 days of the event necessitating the change. The proper officer then will approve the amendment within the next 15 days, 15 days. For changes in non-core fields, no approval of the proper officer is required and the amendment can be effected by the taxable person on his own on the common portal. Then cancellation or suspension of registration and revocation of cancellation of registration. Registration can be cancelled either by proper officer or on an application of the registered person. Business, in case business discontinued, transferred, amalgamated with other legal entity, demerged or otherwise disposed of. Changes in the constitution of the business. Taxable person no longer liable to be registered or intends to opt out of voluntary registration. Then registration can be cancelled by the proper officer on his own. In case a registered person has contravened the prescribed provisions, a registered person has not filed returns or continuous 6 months or 2 tax periods return for a financial year beyond 3 months from due date of furnishing the said return for composition supplier. Voluntarily registered person has not commenced the business within 6 months from the date of registration. Registration was obtained by means of fraud, willful misstatement or suppression of facts. Then once a registered person has applied for cancellation of registration or the proper officer seeks to cancel his registration, proper officer may suspend his registration during pendency of proceedings relating to cancellation of registration on file by such registered person. Then procedure for cancellation, where the registered person applies for cancellation. In that case, registered person seeking cancellation shall apply for the same within 30 days, 30 days of occurrence of the event warranting cancellation in prescribed form, furnishing the details of inputs held in stock or inputs contained in semi-finished goods held in stock and of capital goods held in stock on the date from which cancellation of registration is sought, liability thereon, payment if any made, and relevant documents. Proper officer PO shall issue the order of cancellation within 30 days, 30 days of submission of application for the same. Then procedure for cancellation where the proper officer cancels the registration. In that case, PO shall issue a SCN to the registered person who has to reply to said notice within 7 days. Proceedings shall be dropped if reply to SCN is satisfactory, where instead of replying to SCN, person furnishes all pending returns and makes full payment of tax along with interest and late fee. PO shall issue a SCN to the registered person who has to reply to said notice within 7 days. Cancellation order shall be issued within 30 days of reply to SCN where registration is liable to be cancelled. Then revocation of cancellation. In case where registration is cancelled suo motu by the proper officer, the taxable person can apply within 30 days, 30 days, extendable by 30 days, 30 days by additional joint commissioner and by further 30 days, 30 days by commissioner of service of cancellation order requesting the officer for revoking the cancellation order by him. However, before so applying, the person has to make good the defaults by filing all pending returns, making payment of all dues and so for which the registration was cancelled by the officer. If said, the proper officer will revoke the cancellation earlier ordered by him. However, if the officer concludes to reject the request for revocation of cancellation, he will first observe the principle of natural justice by way of issuing notice to the person and hearing him on the issue. However, there shall be deemed revocation of cancellation upon furnishing of pending GST returns subject to the condition that the registration has not been cancelled by the proper officer under Rule 22. Thank you.